Calflora is a nonprofit plant database providing information on wild California plants, conservation, education, and appreciation. These are some of the folks behind Calflora. Cynthia, executive director, is also here and can help me answer questions or jump in on anything that I miss during the presentation. This is just a little history of Calflora. It started as a text file being emailed around of plants and where they were. It eventually became a nonprofit, and then after that, it turned into the online database that many of us are familiar with. After about a decade of that, we developed Weed Manager and the mobile app for collecting data in the field. 8,500 wild plant species, millions of observations. We have relationships between plant names, so you can keep track of old and new plant names, and that people having different names throughout time doesn't mess up your ability to search for things. We have lots of photos, lots of good photos, and many active users. And hopefully, we will recruit some of you to become active users if you're not already. So as mentioned, yeah, 8,500 plus native and introduced species. So we try to record all the wild plants in the state of California, focus on wild plants. And we also receive data from other feeds, such as the Consortium of California Herbaria, and some of the data that's been verified that comes from INAT. If any of you have used Calflora's website, most likely you've probably seen one of these pages. This is a taxon report page that just gives a little summary of each species of plant in those 8,500 wild species. You can see on the map all the locations that have been mapped in Calflora and other, relevant information about that plant and where it grows and when it flowers and all that. So we have various, parties that are bringing data in to Calflora and taking it out for various uses. There's many tools on Calflora. It can be a little overwhelming at first to figure out which ones to use. Hopefully today's presentation will help you figure that out for your purposes. Although I'm not going to go over everything that Calflora offers. I'm going to focus on the tools around mapping weeds. And, Calflora wasn't originally a tool for mapping weeds. So there's many things that exist outside of the weed world on Calflora, as you may be aware. And then Weed Manager is a tool that kind of is in the middle there, kind of pulling the data use and creation together in a more advanced form for land managers. It was developed based on a need of land managers to use these different tools together to track and manage weeds. So Weed Manager is a subscription service, and we're gonna throughout this presentation, I'm gonna try to touch on some of the things that are in Weed Manager, but the presentation itself is gonna be focused on the tools that are available to all of you for free. Anyone can add data to Calflora. The most advanced way to do that is with the Observer Pro phone app, whether in Android or iOS. But you can also still upload geotag photos and create a record from that. And you can create records right on the website through Plant Observation Entry, or POE. You can also have data uploaded to Calflora, but that's a service that Calflora offers that costs money. But if you have data sets that you want to get into Calflora, you can email us and talk to us about what that would take. And then getting that data back out of Calflora is pretty simple. You can download it in these formats listed here. This allows you to, archive that data. If you're collecting your data in Observer Pro, you can archive that data for your own, offline storage or storage on your local servers. Or you can just, download it, some specific data to bring into Excel to do an analysis, or however you want to use it. To create maps, if you want to create a nice map for a presentation, you probably want to do that outside of Calflora. So Observer Pro, again, is the mobile app, and you can do more than map weeds with it. So I'd just like to mention that many people are also mapping rare plants. We have a form that's based on the CNDDB data forms in the mobile app. It's available for Weed Manager subscribers. Many Weed Manager groups also do seed collection through Observer Pro. And there's also the ability to collect data as surveys and to link those together in a survey with the mobile app. So those are just some other ways of collecting data that Observer Pro offers. A couple of notes on data privacy. First one is a Weed Manager specific feature. I'll get into this in a minute, but one of the things that you get with Weed Manager is you get private data storage of your treatment data throughout time. That's not something that's available to free accounts, but if you did have a subscription, you can do that. And all that data is always private. All users have access to publish or keep unpublished or to obscure their data. So obscure looks something like this. You have a specific location that you've mapped. You can keep that specific data in your own private records and then make available to the public a more generalized location in the middle of a USGS quarter quad. So if you have something that's you don't want to, it might get poached or whatever, you don't want to reveal the exact location, but you want people to know that it exists in this area, you can use obscure. Some of these slides have a YouTube little icon on them with a link, and that's just to indicate that we have a YouTube video on our website that goes over this. So if you wanted to come back and review how this works, you could check out the YouTube video. See any questions yet? So we're gonna jump into the website, the real heart of the matter here, and look at some of the tools that Calflora offers for people who want to map weeds. So I've mentioned a number of these already. Just want to review some terms. Weed Manager is the paid subscription service. So again, throughout, I'll be mentioning certain features that you won't have access to with a free subscription. I know one of the questions I think we're trying to answer today is, what is the difference between the two? So I'm going to try to mention those along the way. But that's what Weed Manager is. It's the paid service. We're going to look at a tool called My Observations, which is the search tool for people who don't have Weed Manager. This allows you to view all your observations historically. I'm sure some of you have used this. And then POE is the abbreviation for Plant Observation Entry. And this is basically the form on the website, whereas Observer Pro is the mobile app. So on Observer Pro, you get a view of the form, you're collecting data in the field, and then you upload that data, and then you can view it on the website in POE. You're looking at the same form, although it looks very different. You basically have the same data accessible. And I am going to navigate to that in a second, but I'm going to do a couple more slides first. This is my simple definition, a system which enables organizations engaged in land management to track weed infestations and treatments over time. And if you took out the clause and treatments, then it's a fairly accurate statement for what you could do in Calflora without a weed manager subscription. Here, I'm going to try to do a little overview comparison of what these two levels of access offer before going through all these tools, all the free tools with you, showing you how they work. So on the free tool side, you get your personal account. So you can add data, you can edit that data, you can view that data. And what I mentioned before, My Observations, where you can see all that. When you have a Weed Manager account, you get a group. And with a group account, you can add, edit, and view the data across your whole group. And your group, can have many members, and that different members can have different access levels. So some members could edit all the data, some people can all edit their data, etc. So that's the difference. That's one of the big differences there is your ability to manage data as a group. I also mentioned the next item already. With Observer Pro, you can collect assessment data of plants, and anyone who signs up for a free account can use Observer Pro. But with Weed Manager, you can also collect treatment data. And that leads to the next item, which is the forms that you get. So if you don't have Weed Manager, you download Observer Pro right now, install it on your phone, you log into your Calflora account, you'll see 3 data collection forms. Those are available to everyone as individuals to use. With the Weed Manager subscription, you get to create your own custom forms and your own data dictionaries. So you get all the fields that you want, none of the ones that you don't want. You can have certain fields required. You can have fields autofill, and you can set, the data dictionaries if you want certain options in those fields, all customized to your group's needs. And you can have multiple different forms. You could have forms that do, for rare plants, seed collection, some of the things I mentioned before. So when you're in the field collecting data, the difference between having the free and the weed manager. With the free tools, I'm going to demonstrate this later on, how to link historical data to the app. And so when you go on the field, you can see a selection of data that, it'll show on the map, and you can navigate to find where those plants are in the real world. With a weed manager group, you can set up as many projects as you want, and each project has their own custom historical data that's viewable in the field. So, you could have a project for each species, a project for each preserve, a project for each species in each preserve, and you'd have a unique view in each of those of whatever data you want to see when you're in the field. So you can find the plants that you want to find and not have your map cluttered with other observations. Finally, as mentioned, it's really easy to download your data from Calflora. The difference would be kind of related to the first item of having a personal account. From the public tool without logging in, you can download data, and you can download your own personal data from my observations. With the Weed Manager account, you can download data across your group. So even if it's, private data, observations that you've hid from the public, or private information like your treatment data, so you could download all that and you could put it into Excel, or you can run reports right in Calflora on that data. So that's a summary of some of the big differences between having a weed manager subscription and not having one. With that, I'm going to jump into the website and start to show you what you do have access to as a general user of Calflora. So this is the Calflora website. There's a couple searches here. So search for plants and observation search. Search for plants is just finding, it's kind of like if you wanted to find those taxon reports that I mentioned in the beginning. You can do a search, various, fields you can select. You could do Alameda County, grass-like plants, click search. You could enter a specific name and click search, and it'll bring up a list of plants that fit that description. And then from here, here's my favorite plant, Agalops tranquialis. And if you click on that, you get to that taxon report. So again, probably if any of you have used Calflora, you've probably used some of these pages already. You don't even need to log in to use that. You also don't need to log in to use observation search, which is one of a handful of search tools that Calflora offers, and this is the only one that's available without logging in. This allows you to search all the public observations and public data. For example, if you were collecting treatment data in wherever you are, you publish them, those records would show up in a search here. If I do the same search that I just did, Agalops tranquialis in Alameda County, you get all these observations, and some of these might be managed and some of them might not, but all that treatment information is not going to be there. One thing that the WMAs are interested in is management status. So I'm just going to I can add a column here, click apply. And so this will show the management status for each of these observations. So these are all verified, reported, managed. So here we have a managed population of goat grass in the Oakland area. And if I click here, this is what's going to open up POE, plant observation entry. And again, this is the form. This is your form, and this is Friends of Saucil Creek using advanced data collection. So I'm not sure if this is a weed manager account or not. But if you're a weed manager user, you might have fields for like, oh, we were out there and we sprayed the goat grass with Fusilade and we spent 2 hours doing it and blah, blah, blah. All that information is going to be hidden for me because I'm not a part of this group. Even though the fact that this plant is here, how many plants, which they didn't record, but they have, say, they did have treatment, 5 people for 2 hours, hand picking. There's a notes field and a treatment notes field. And so if you have a Weed Manager subscription, you can have a treatment notes field, which is hidden from the public. So we want to put that information like we handpicked for 2 hours, that would be private. I'm guessing that this is not a Weed Manager subscription. So all they have access to is the public notes field. So they put that there and that's going to be public. Okay, I did search for plants, observation search. Before you go out into the field and collect data, is decide what data you want to see when you're out there. We go all the way over here to Lake Tahoe. I'm going to change back to any county. We're going to get rid of this plant name. And so another way you can search, another criteria you can use is the area to search in. So the default, it's going to search anywhere. If I click anywhere, I can also click in map area. So if I do that, click search, showing the first 2,000 records, which is the max, default max. So there's more than 2,000 records in this area. That's kind of a lot. So there's a couple of ways I can narrow that down. What I'm going to show is that you can select a more narrow area. You can just do that freehand by drawing your own polygon. So you pull up this polygon dialog and you click start drawing. And once that stops spinning, I can go in here and I can draw. Well, it's going to be kind of hard with all these observations. Let me go over here. I'm going to draw polygon. And you can click and drag a vertex, add another vertex and drag it. You can click on a vertex, delete it. You can click on the edge and add another one. Just create whatever shape you want to search in. I accidentally clicked on one of those observations. That scrolled me down. So I'm going to scroll back up. I'm going to say stop drawing. I'm going to hide this little thing and click search again. And that one was much faster. We're down to 55 records. Another way I could do this is Calflora has built-in layers in all their map searching tools. Default one I often go to is using region and protected area, CPAD. And so most public lands will be in here. And once I get that up, I can click on one of these. And when I click on it, it'll say down here what this is. So that says California Tahoe Conservancy, no access. This is Burton Creek State Park. So now I have another option here to search within the selected area. So I'm going to change to that, do search again, and I got all the observations in Burton Creek State Park. So let's say that's where I'm working today. And that's the data I want to see when I go in the field. I don't need the 2,000 plus observations all around Lake Tahoe. I just need the stuff in Burton Creek State Park. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Tools, click Save Searches, and I'm going to give this a name. These things can accumulate, so it's good to give meaningful names. And if it's something that you want to delete later, I often put the word test in it, and so I remember like, oh yeah, I don't need to keep that. So I'm going to name it Tahoe Test. And that's saved. And we're gonna utilize this later. That is how you create a saved search. And you can do the same thing in other search tools. You could do it in My Calflora, but that would be limited. Or in My Calflora, that's where I'm gonna go next. So if I go to the home page, top here, top left, you got My Calflora. That's your personal account. And you click on that and you get My Observations. And you'll see a very similar looking search tool. And you could also do a save search from here. But from here, I can only search my own observations. So I know I don't have any data near Tahoe. I wouldn't be able to pull up any of those records. So I wouldn't be able to see them out in the field. by doing the search here. So it's more useful to do it in observation search instead. So here I am again. If I just go from the Calflora homepage, top left, my Calflora, this is kind of like your personal stuff. It's got my profile, my groups. I'm in a lot of groups, but if you're, if you're at this training, you probably aren't in a group. So you might have nothing here. There's comments, which if people comment on your observations, they'll pop up here. Preferences, searches, alerts, we're going to get to later. And then there's these tools over here. My observations, just showed you really quickly. Next one I'll look at is my plant lists. So from here, you can create and manage plant lists that you can use when you're out in the field. You can use for creating searches. All you do is you can just say make new plant list. So if I go, we're going to go back to my Calflora. So here's another page in my Calflora. It's called searches. And it's a list of all my searches. And right at the top is the one I just made, Tahoe test. And you can see it shows which application it was made. I mentioned how you can make a search in observation search or my observations. You can also do it in all the various group search tools. The group search tools are specific to Weed Manager accounts. So most of my saved searches are for group searches, but you would not have access to those search tools if you're not in a group. So from here, I can click this purple pencil. It's going to show me the info and it allows me to share it. Since I have groups, I could share it with my groups. But what I want to do, I want to run this search again. So I want to see the search that I just made. That brought that up. I was going to look at what is in this list, get a few species here. So I can just go and highlight everything on this page, Control C and copy it. From here, I can do add a list of plant names and I can paste all this text in here and click add and it'll parse out all those species. So you can see that popped all those up there. So that's, if you have if you have text, you can, like I showed you, you could pull it from Calflora. If you have a text list somewhere else, you can easily paste those in. And of course, you can add one plant at a time. I was like, oh, we also need our good friend Agalops tranquialis. Hit that in, and we can add that to the list as well. So then I'm going to give this the same name. I like to name my plant list with my saved searches when I'm associating them, then I know that they go together. And if I want to delete one, I can delete the other. Give it a little description. I'm not going to link it to a group. This is going to be for personal use. But I do want to make it available on phone applications. And I'm going to click save. So that's a plant list. Now if I go to, so now my plant list is here. And from here, you can view it. You can click here and get illustrated plant list. So here's my plant list with some photos. So that can be neat. And you can change the display over here. Want to show bloom period, or you can group, right now it's grouped alphabetically. You can group it by family. You can turn the photos off, etc. So you can kind of format your plant list however you want to view it here. We're going to use this plant list later on in the mobile app, but we'll come back to that later. First, I want to talk a little bit about shapes. So you have your own portfolio of shapes. So either lines or polygons, so two types of shapes you can have. Every observation in Calflora is going to have a point. So some of the key things you need for an observation, you need to have a date, an observer name, a plant name, and a location, a point in space. So every record is going to have those. But it's up to you if you want to use lines or polygons. Anytime you create a record with a line or a polygon, it's going to be added to your list of shapes. But you can also make your own shapes outside of observations, or you can upload them. And there's a video on YouTube if you want more info. But if we go back to the My Calflora, you can see my shapes. If I go back here, you can see I did create a shape. And let's see, if I pull this up, when I draw a shape here, and this is a shape that I brought back up. But if I want to save it to my list of shapes, I can give it a name. We'll give it the same name. And we'll say save. So now if I go to my shapes and shape editor and search for Tahoe, there's my shape. There it is. And then from here, I can edit this shape. I can move the vertices around. I can add a vertex. I can delete. There's other things you can do. You can change the purpose. So this is a search. This is a search polygon. So we're going to leave it as a search. You can do regions and trails, and you can do assessments and treatments which are associated with observations. Also from this tool, you can upload a shapefile or a KML. So if you have pre-existing shapes you want to bring into Calflora, it's pretty easy to do. You can also download from here. I guess it's just GeoJSON. You can download shapes that you create here as well. And then you can just also manually, instead of creating the shape in the search tool like I did, you can add a shape here and start drawing it in shape editor. That is shapes. All those things I just went through are all things that you have the ability to create as a for the free account. And then they can all be used in the mobile app for helping you collect data in the field. So we're going to go over that next. But the big thing we'll look at now is preferences. So under preferences, there's various preferences here you can set for your account overall. There's two that we're going to focus on here. One is using Observer Pro as an independent. So again, Observer Pro is the mobile app you use to map out in the field. And so this helps you define what kind of information you're going to see when you're out in the field. As I mentioned before, if you had a Weed Manager subscription, you can do a lot more. You can have projects, and each project has its own saved search, and you can really do a lot more customizing of what you see out there. You also do custom forms of what data you collect. But as an independent, I have access to these three projects. They're called projects, but it's also each project is linked to a form. So we have access to three forms that we're going to look at later. Mostly we're going to look at this one called Advanced Data Collection. And you can see here you can link a search. And this, I was playing with this earlier. So this was already, I had linked this to Tahoe test. So this is my saved search called Tahoe test that is now going to be connected to the advanced data collection project. So when I pull that project up in the mobile app, it's going to determine what historical data I see in the field. And I'm going to demo that later to reinforce it, but hopefully that made sense. And then you also can choose your plant list. So if I scroll down, should have the one we just made called Tahoe test. And that will allow you to use that plant list to help narrow down the search. So, by default, you're going to have the list of all Calflora plants. And if you're going out and you're only mapping a few species, you can use this to just narrow down, make it easier to find the plant in the list by using a smaller list. So that's nice convenience. So from here, we can click Save Preferences. I'll show you how later to refresh. When you do this, when you change your preferences here, you're going to want to refresh your mobile app to get those changes loaded into the mobile app before you go out in the field. You can do it out in the field if you have a data connection, but always safer to do it before you go out. To make it easier, I'm not going to go back and forth between the mobile app and the website, but I will be demoing the mobile app in a little bit. Then the other item in preferences we want to look at is background lines and polygons. And so I'm going to click this. This is going to open up a new page. It looks kind of like Shape Editor. It's a little different. It said only my lines and polygons, search. I click search and it brought up all these polygons, including my latest Tahoe test. So I click on the pencil. I make this available in Observer Pro. Again, Observer Pro is the mobile app. I can pick a color, go with blue, and we want it to be used in our independent group. So I'll click save. Again, this is a setting for the mobile app. So again, I will want to refresh my data on my mobile app to get that setting to load into the mobile app, preferably before I go out into the field. So all this is kind of prepping, setting up before you go out to collect data. Before we switch over to the mobile app, another item that's available to anyone with an account is to set up an email alert. An email alert allows you to be notified whenever new observations show up within a predefined search. So, for this group, an obvious application of this would be to have a list of EDRR, high priority weeds in your area or that you might think might be coming into your area that are in surrounding areas, and to create a saved search. Remember how we did that before? Let's see, we'll go to searches. We have my Tahoe tests, run this search. So this was the saved search that we created. So you could do it something like this. You could draw a polygon that's much bigger. You could do counties, and then you could select your county, and you could say in selected area, and you can get anything in El Dorado County on a certain plant list. You do more criteria here, you pull up your plant list. Here we go. Let's use this one. EDRR volunteers. Say that's your plant list. You got El Dorado County selected. Search, see what happens. We got 310 records of things like Detrichia and Hypericum. Glad Detrichia. So anytime, so this, you could then go up to tools again and do save search. You could save it as, El Dorado County EDRR, whatever you want to name it. Then you would come to My Calflora and go to alerts. From here, you're going to see all your saved searches. You click this purple pencil, and you say you want to add an alert. You can change it from weekly to monthly, depending on how frequently you want to get it. But basically, that's just it's gonna send you an email every week or every month whenever a new observation meets the search criteria that you set here. So anything on this EDRR list in El Dorado County, every week or every month, you'll get an email if anything new pops up that fits that criteria. And then an email will look something like this, or it doesn't look quite like this, but it has this kind of information on it, what was found, some photos, and you can click on those links and see the actual observations on Calflora's website. All right, we just did that. We just created an email alert. Survey entry, I wanted to mention this briefly. The data can be brought in. I think we even saw this on the map. There was some observations in Tahoe area that were surveys. So if you guys are doing surveys or interested in doing surveys, this is another way to add data rather than adding like individual observations. So a survey is a search for certain plants in a discrete area at a certain time. So you have an area, a date, and a plant list, and you can say, plants were absent, there's this many. This is a good way to record absence data. So if you want to, document that a plant was not found in an area, a survey is a good way to do that. So it might look something like this. You take a track from your survey along these roads and trails and you buffer it out, and then you have some observations that fall into that survey. And this is what it looks like when you're defining your survey. We have a YouTube video that goes into how to do this in more detail. And then you have your observations. if you link observations, you also you don't need to link individual observations at all. You can just create a plant list and just say, 0, 1, 2 plants were found for each plant. It's flexible in terms of how you want to use it, but it's a way to enter a plant list for an area at a certain time. Another tool that is specific to Weed Manager is reports. I just wanted to mention it because I know it's of interest to Weed Manager groups. Reporting out the data is kind of one of the reasons I think y'all are interested in using Calflora. So there are group reports that are built in to Weed Manager. This is just a snapshot of the interface, or you can download it as a PDF or as a Excel file or CSV. And there's different built-in reports that you can see in the list. So this is an example report where you have species by preserve and you get gross area and infested area. And then just a fancier example of something you could do if you did have a Weed Manager subscription. This is a monthly IPM report where it's summing up hours by project and herbicide amounts. So those are all things that you can track as part of your treatment work if you are a Weed Manager subscriber and then report it out. The next section is history stacks, and history stacks I kind of put in the middle here is it's going to be the bridge between the website and the mobile app. It's applicable in both realms. But basically, history stack is just you're looking at the history of one plant population through time, where the first observation, the earliest observation is going to be the root record. And then as you take more assessments and you can do treatment records if you have Weed Manager, and you stack those on top of each other, you get this history stack. There's also a population record associated with this, which probably isn't too relevant for you guys right now, but it's more relevant in the Weed Manager world. And we're going to look at this at the end of the training. I'm going to stack some data and we're going to look at it in POE so you can see it like kind of more real time. But this is a snapshot of what is a snapshot in POE, plant observation entry. So we're looking at one observation and you click on history and it brings this little pull down and it shows, oh, this record is part of a history stack. It's the root record, the earliest record, and here's all the other records in this stack. And you can scroll through that list and just click on them and you can see, oh, there's polygon from year. It's moved a little bit, it's changed shape. You can look at number of plants and see it went from 1+ plants to 49 plants. You can just get a quick snapshot of the treatment history. If you're a Weed Manager user and you're recording treatments, you could look through that history quickly. So that's kind of what the history stack looks like on a single record in the desktop website. And then again, we're going to go over this in real time. All my screenshots here are from Android, and I'm going to do a demo in iOS, so you'll get to see what both versions look like. Functionally, pretty much the same. And here in Android, if you're on the map, you can see the purple dots. That's the historical data. So when we set up that save search called Tahoe test, and I linked it to my advanced project, it would then bring the data into this map. And then I can see all those observations, and then the blue dot is me, and I can navigate to where those observations are. And once I find them, I can do a new assessment by clicking on that. And then I click on that little pop-up and I get this thing, and I click new assessment. And then that allows me to stack my next observation while I'm on the field. So that's just a quick and convenient way to keep your data organized in stacks while you're collecting the data in Observer Pro. And we have a series of videos on stacks going over what stacks are, how to create them in the mobile app, and how to create them on the desktop app on our YouTube channel. We're going to jump into the topic of the mobile app. This is the fun part. We get to go out and collect data. So as mentioned, Observer Pro phone app, it's available on Android and iOS. You don't need to have a data plan to use it. You don't need any Wi-Fi connectivity in the field. You just need that connectivity before and after you go in the field so you can log in, refresh the data that you need, get that data on there. Then you go out in the field without a connection, collect data, come back, connect, and then upload that data. You do, of course, need a GPS signal if you're going to be trying to map. That can also be a problem at times. There's no GPS signal, but I think we're all familiar with that, and that's not much we can do about that. This is just basic information. So if you don't have the app yet, if you do have the app and an account, I'd encourage you to maybe try to follow along as in this next section and kind of click around so you get a feel for it. But if you don't, we have videos for just getting set up on Android and iOS. And there's a Calflora help page that kind of runs you through it in text form. All that information is out there if you need to get started after this training. One of the big differences between the two operating systems is the availability of custom maps. When you're in the field, you want to be able to see where you are. And to be able to see where you are, you're going to have a map, and you're going to have a little GPS dot of where you are on that map. If you have data plan and you're connected to the internet, you can load the Google or the Apple Maps, and no problem. You got a little background map. But if you lose that connection, it can be helpful, depending on where you work, to have a backup plan. And Android is a little bit more open and offers more options for backup plans for having a background map. For one, there's some built-in Calflora provided maps in the Android app. You can also make your own maps and load them using that same tool. We have a protocol or a step-by-step guide for doing that on our website with MapTiler and ArcGIS, which, I mean, those are both paid software tools that you may or may not have. I'm not sure if there's other ways to create these maps. If you have those tools, it's a cool way that you could make custom maps with all the info that you want, like your gates, your emergency information, anything you want to put on that map could be on there for your field work. The third option, which we set up already, is to set up background shapes and polygons. So again, we're going to make some connections later on when I pull up the app to the stuff we did earlier, and I'll show you what that looks like. But basically, you can get polygons and lines on the map for you as background. So this is available in both iOS and Android. So it's a decent fallback. If you have no map, you just have like a gray screen. If you at least have a boundary of your preserve, you can get a sense of whether if you know where you are more or less in the preserve and your dot is showing up inside that boundary, you're like, okay, my GPS is working. If you're just a dot on a gray screen, you have no idea if your GPS is working accurately or if you're collecting your point location in the right spot. And the final option I like to mention that we would do a lot is just before we would leave the office, go offline, we would go into the map and just zoom around and load the map into the cache. This is not an official Calflora supported solution. If your app crashes or whatever, you lose that cache, but it generally works for the day. You can have all that map loaded in your cache, and you don't have to worry about not having a data connection to get access to the maps. This is the home screen. So I'm going to go through the basics of the app with these slides and then do it again with the live demo. So again, this is going to be the Android version, and then I'm going to show the iOS version live. So this is just indicating some things to keep in mind to keep the app updated. We just released a new iOS version this week. So if you had it before, you haven't updated, you should update soon. Yeah, not keeping your apps updated can cause compatibility issues. So pay attention to that. Refreshing your data is important to make sure that you have the right information when you're out in the field. And then getting in the right project, which is more relevant if you're in a weed manager group. As we'll see, there's 3 projects available to the free individual account, and they are different. And just to mention, under the projects is the offline maps thing that's only on Android, not iOS. But below that, there's basically 2 buttons. You go to history or you go to observe. So if you go to history and you go to the map, again, this is where you're going to see that save search data that you loaded into your project. And on Android, It's going to be purple is points, pink is polygons, and then green is new data that you collected during your session. So pink and purple are historical, and green is the new data that you're collecting. So that helps you keep track of where you've been and where you haven't been. In iOS, all the historical is purple, so it's just purple and green. There isn't the pink. You do have options for other symbology. So management status can be a good one to indicate whether a population was found or not last time, whether it's, you think it's been extirpated, can help you know what you're getting into, what to expect. You can also use priority as a field to prioritize your weeds, and population plant count. You can get a sense of where your bigger populations and smaller ones are when you're out there in the field. You also, this is Weed Manager specific, being able to set up symbology for plant by plant species. So just to let you know, that's something that's available. Okay, jumping into the form. This is just, you probably can't read this, but this is just the full length of the form, all the different fields that you'll be scrolling through. Well, this is for the weed manager trainings I usually do. So this is not the form that you'll see exactly, but this is an example form. In the top section, you'll have your plant, select your taxon, your species, and take some pictures. When you click on plant, you'll get to select the species, and you can go scientific name or common name. And then over here, I mentioned you can link a plant list. So if you have a default plant list, you can use that here, and that will narrow down the list of plants that you have to choose from. Next section is your location, where you map. If you're just taking a point, you don't need to go into the map. It's just going to automatically take a point. But if you want to do a shape, a polygon, or a line, you need to click into that map and create that shape. And there's some other fields that could be associated with that location. We'll see. When I do the iOS demo, we'll be using the actual form that you guys have, so we can focus more on the fields. But if you click into the map, it'll show you where you are, and you can start drawing a shape or walking around a shape. So I'm not going to be able to demo that today. Kind of hard to do from behind the computer. But in both versions, the default that a lot of people use is if you're going to create polygons in the first place, often the best default is you can just walk around the polygon and click this add point, and then it'll create the polygon as you walk around it. So if it's walkable, that's usually a good way to do it. But if you want to draw it in by hand, or you want to edit that one afterwards, the one that you created, the two apps currently work pretty differently. The Android, you can really draw in each vertex and move it around, whereas the iOS, it's kind of just it's a quick little shape. Maybe I can demo it more in real life in a minute, and it'll make more sense. But there's less control over where the vertices are, and you can't really move the vertices until you bring it into the desktop. And this is just reiterating again, once you're in here, you often will start from the map screen to find where you are in relation to your historical data. And then you can click on that, and you can do new assessment to stack that on. So we're going to do that here in a minute. So just to mention, there are Bluetooth GPS extenders that you can use. The two on the bottom are more high res ones. I've used the two on the top, and they're okay. And this was mostly working in Marin, where it was not too bad. But there are some deep canyons and things where GPS is tricky. The ones at the top, it would help us, I don't know, some percentage of the time it would help get us better accuracy or help us get us any signal at all. So they were helpful, but we didn't always need them. The two on the bottom are more expensive, more high resolution, and probably more helpful than the two on the top. But I have not used either of those. I've heard they're good though. I'm going to demo first the iOS app, how to stack in the field, and then we're going to tie it all together, and I'll show you how to edit that data in POE on the desktop. So this here is the mobile app in iOS. So it's looks pretty similar. If we look at kind of the center of the screen underneath the flower, we'll see the first box where I have my option for groups. And if you are an independent user, all you're going to see there is independent. You're not going to have any groups. And then under independent, you'll see we'll have three different forms or projects. I'll just quickly mention the other two. So simple data collection. If I go to observe, we show that you got plant, picture, some notes, location, and number of plants, and that's it. And then post-fire is another form. We're going to use advanced data collection. Right below that is a refresh button. So I'm not going to click that because it can take a minute. But what that will do is it'll load all this, so all the things we set up a half hour ago. I set up my save search and link that to this advanced data collection. So that should bring in all the observations around Lake Tahoe that I brought up in my save search. We linked a plant list, and we also set a background polygon related to the save search. So by clicking refresh, actually, no, I'm going to click refresh. I'm going to try it because I didn't have all those things set before I last refreshed. So I'm going to have to do it. Hopefully it won't take too long. So it's loading, it's loading. It's going to pull that data in. At the bottom, there's three buttons. You got the home, which is where we are. So we're on the home screen. And then you're either going to do observe or history. So if you go to observe, this is what I did. Oops, since I refreshed, I need to reselect my group and reselect my project, then click observe. And again, it's going to bring up the form. So this is basically, it's like if you had a new plant population never been found before, this would be the way to do it. If I go back to home, it's going to say unsave, say okay, it's still loading. I'm going to go to history. Here we go. So here's my history map. So it looks like I loaded my data. So we see we have the purple dots are my observations from my save search. The blue polygon is the background polygon that I saved and I linked as my background polygon. And then, I could walk around and I would see myself on this map and I could walk towards these observations. And then I could click on one and see what it is. And then if I found this same plant, I would do a new assessment. So I'm going to click new assessment. You can see the first field is already filled out. So if I click here, so you can see at the top, you got scientific name and then you got Tahoe test. So it's using my Tahoe test list. There's my list. So it's defaulting to the list I linked to this project. And you can see it's just showing, it's got Agalops is the plant that I added, and then it was the other ones that came up in the search, and it's got this peony because we found it in this area, and that's the area that I created my plant list from. From here, I can take some pictures. You can see at the top, I have an option of doing from photo library. By default, you're going to be taking a new photo from your camera. But if you had already taken a photo for some reason, you're entering this later on, you could pull photos from your photo library as well. You got 4 picture slots. So again, this is the form that you all would have access to as a free user, the most advanced form that you'd have access to. You have a notes field. So this is carrying over the notes from the previous record. So I can delete this and enter my own new notes. And then from here, I got my map. We don't want just a point, we want a polygon. In the bottom left, I can click draw and I go polygon. And you see that just lit up the add point in the middle of the bottom. It was gray, now it's blue. And so I could walk around and click add point, add point. But again, I can't do that because I'm not really at this location. So instead, I'm going to take my finger and I'll try to show you how this works in iOS. It's kind of just, you just drag your finger around. If I don't like that, I can go draw clear and go back to draw polygon, and I could draw another shape. It's like this. I can also change to satellite. So I could clear that. And I could try to, maybe it's only in this field here. I could try to capture that and then click done. So there I got my polygon. But my point is kind of off outside my polygon. The point is the cross there in the middle. So I'm like, oh, I probably want the point a little more centered. The way Calflora works, you often have to click on the point. I mean, you saw that when I was doing a new assessment, you had to click on the point to do a new observation. So it's good to make sure your points are kind of coincide within your polygons. So I'm going to do draw move, which is already on. I'm going to move this so this point's right in the middle. Click done. There, that looks great. So it's showing my lat long. It was already collected from that. I can do a radius or buffer. Maybe I'll do that another example of that in a second. So location description, again, that was carried over from before. We'll just leave that as is. We got habitat. You got a list of habitat. Open field. You get your number of plants. And again, in Weed Manager, you customize what fields you have, what your options are here. Like here, you can have different ranges. You could say you don't want these ranges, etc. But for free users, this is what you get. We'll say flowering, distribution. No, it's not dense. We'll say scattered plants. Percent cover. And then in the next section, you got your area. So gross area, if we did a polygon, it's going to be automatically calculated. So I don't need to fill that out. Infested area should also be calculated from the gross area and the percent cover. So I'm not going to fill that out. Management status. This is going to be probably important for you guys if you want to keep track of which populations are under management or not. So you'd have the under management option, or you have the verified option, or if you got rid of it, you could have the extirpated option as well. And then you get the survey ID, and so that would be if you were doing a survey, you could enter that there. Date and time is going to be set for you based on your phone. And then I'm going to click save. And you'll see I got a little red number 1 down there in my history, showing that I have 1 record to upload. Let me show you one other thing on here. If I do a different one, I say I'm going to stack on this, brings in my species. If I do a radius buffer here, say 5 meters, that's instead of doing, if you're doing a polygon, there's no reason to enter that. But instead of, if I'm just like, I want to do a point with a 5-meter radius, that's an alternative to doing a polygon. So I'm going to leave these other ones blank for now. I'm just going to save that as another example. So now I'm still in history. You can see I can go to the other tabs in history. The map is the one where I spend most of my time. All right, you can switch to satellite again and see the satellite map. You can see the hybrid map. You got the project tab, but this is going to be all your historical data that you're seeing on the map. And then you got your session tab, and this is where you see the 2 observations that I just made. And again, on the map, those are going to be green. So you got your green points are your session data, the purple are historical. If I go to session, I can see just the session. If I go to project, I see just the historical. Back to session, this is where I say, okay, I come back to the office, or you can do it in the field and say, okay, I'm done for the day. I'm going to click in the bottom left, upload all. So you want to upload these? Yes. Once you upload them, you can't edit them on your device anymore. Actually, on iOS, it removes them from your device. On Android, you can leave them on there if you want, but you can't edit them. Yeah, editing data in the office with POE, which is the abbreviation for plant observation. Entry. Just from here, you don't even have to go to My Calflora. You just go straight to My Observations from the left menu. And you can see at the top here, these 2 most recent records are the ones that I just took. And if I click on the purple pencil, I could just publish it, I could delete it, but I'm going to click editor. That's going to pop it open into POE. So again, circling back to some of the presentation from earlier, we went over history stocks. You got at the top this history pull down, and you can see the observation that I stacked on top of. I can click on this. We can go there. You see those nice photos. We can go here. And if I'm here, you can see I have delete and edit. If I go to this other observation, you can see those buttons disappear because this is not my record. This is Charles Russell's record. I do not have the ability to edit this record. But I do have the ability to edit the record I just uploaded, which comes in by default unpublished. So you want to work out if you want to get your data published, you want to work out a workflow where you're coming back to the office, you're checking your data, doing some quality assurance, quality control, QA/QC, and making it published, changing it to published. You can see, my notes came through as new notes. My name is Calflora Training, my date, all the other fields that I filled out. We got the gross area and the infested area. So those are both calculated. So the gross area was just this polygon. They just did the math on that. And then it took the midpoint of the percent cover here and then multiplied it times the gross area to get the infested area. So you can see you don't need to fill out either of those fields. If you just want to create a polygon, fill out percent cover, you'll get that stuff automatically. And so I can go in here and I can edit this. I can edit my shape. I click shape, I click edit shape, and again, I can move these points around. I can delete a vertex. I can add a vertex. Hit stop editing. I can move my points. If I didn't like that point, I can change it. Click it there. I can change any of these fields. And then I can change this to published, which I'm not really going to do because this is not real. But if you did that and click save, once you click published, it would then be available to anyone in the world searching for observation search. They will now see your data up there and they'll see all this information. But since I didn't do that, no one else should be able to see this record. Okay. Let's look at the other record that I made. Click editor, brings it up in POE. This is the one where I want to demonstrate how you can do a radius of 5 meters, and it will display that radius there, and it'll still calculate the gross area. Now, I didn't enter a percent cover on this one, so it didn't do the infested area automatically. But the gross area was automatically created from the radius. Now, you'll note the radius is not actually a shape, though. So if you really want to have shapes to download and create maps with, this is not a shape. It's just a radius that's being visually shown on the map. So if you really want to have that shape, you might want to draw it in. So hopefully that pulled it together there at the end, where we saw the stuff we set up earlier today. We set all that stuff up on the website. We loaded it into the Observer Pro. We collected some data, and then we uploaded that data to the website, and then we went back and saw it there in POE. So that's the full circle process. And to go back to the previous question, if I'm here in my observations, I got all my records here. I can go to tools. I can go to download results and choose a format. I can download as a shapefile, point, polygon, or GeoJSON, which has both points and polygons. So you can access all that data. But again, this is my observations. This is a single user. One of the benefits of having Lead Manager subscription is you have a whole group and you could download all the data for your whole group as one data set. And that's what we would do. And then we would put that up on our GIS server. Like every year, just download all of our weed data and put that shapefile on our GIS server. How do you update your iOS mobile device, delete and restore?
Yeah, and I'm referring to the app. I mean, not sure your app is the most current.
You go to the store and you search for it, and it should tell you if it needs to be updated or not. If you're having issues, deleting and reinstalling can fix those issues at times.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. The Weed Mapper subscription is probably too expensive for us, unfortunately, but would be a great tool for us. Is there any advice on navigating that problem, or would we need to put a group of folks willing to share the subscription? It's an amazing platform and great training. Thanks so much. Yeah, you can put together a group. The subscriptions are basically based on number of users. Smaller organizations have teamed up with larger organizations and just joined their weed manager groups. That's totally legal. Or you could just pull together a few small groups and do that together.
You just need to be willing to share data, share plant observations, share treatment information with whoever's in your group, because the people in your group can see your treatment information. So if that's private or not something you can share, just be aware of that your group will be able to see it all.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think I describe a weed manager group as a group of people who are collecting and managing data in a similar way and together. So yeah, as
Mhm.
you're sharing all that data, probably using, I mean, you could be using different forms, but probably using a lot of the same things. In addition to this training and YouTube materials, do any manuals or other technical resources exist online to go back and reference? So there's how to do stuff. We got the YouTube channel and we got Calflora help. So there's links scattered around the website. There's a help page that links to all those. You could also try, type into Google what you want to find and do cite calflora.org. That might work as well. Those are some ways to get info on your own. If you have issues, beginner getting set up issues would go to number 4. Just email the support page. There's a support page with an email address. So just email Calflora for help on that. Once you get more experienced and you find bugs doesn't seem to be a user error, but seems to be something wrong with the website, you can submit them on GitHub. We have an issues page where you can post and see other issues that have been posted. And if your issue hasn't been posted, you can post it on GitHub. Just have to register for an account to do that. And you can always, if you don't want to do that, you can always just submit it via email as well. But GitHub is a nice way to make it publicly accountable and everyone else can see it and see what's going on. The final resource is the Google group, which is not very active these days, but it exists as a place to discuss more like sharing information and strategizing with other groups.
So the Weed Manager Google group, if you're a Weed Manager subscriber or interested in learning more about it, you can join those meetings. We have those quarterly, and that's a good way to ask Weed Manager specific questions. But if you have more general questions, info@calflora.org is also, if you're reading the help pages, you check the YouTube channel, you tried all the things, you can also email us and say, here's my question.